that if you actually had more free time, that you wouldn't be considered successful. I see so many women that are like, I have to do this and this and this. And it's really sad because I'm like, you don't, we're making more work for ourselves than what's really necessary. So I think so much has changed in the 17 years since I became an entrepreneur. And now the pressures are just a lot different.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of CEO Frequency. I am super excited because today we have an amazing guest, Sailynn, who has an incredible story to share, which I can personally relate to. Most of you have heard my story before about scaling a business, hitting burnout, which we all do, right? So Sailynn has a very unique entrepreneurial journey. She started her first business back in 2007 after working 5 different jobs in 7 years. So that's a lot of work. And then starting her first business, scaling it to $1 million in revenue in her first 3 years, but hitting burnout in the process, as we often do. So working 80 hours a week, being on call 24/7 just was not sustainable. And she figured it out. She figured out a solution, which is what she's here to share with us today. Super exciting. Just drawing a line and drawing a boundary for herself. So Sailynn, why don't you just open up today and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So thanks so much for having me. I am always excited to come on and share my story. So that way, hopefully it inspires other entrepreneurs if they're experiencing burnout. I always say, I help women entrepreneurs that are on the verge of burnout or burnt out or in complete denial about burnout. And that last one always gets the most giggles, which I know that's the majority of people. So back in 2010, that was me. Like you said, I was completely burnt out and I had 100 staff. And it was one of those things where just a regular ho-hum day, a sick call came in. I had been working a shift in the morning, 6 to 9. I was in the senior home care business and then going and working all day. And the person called out sick and it was just exactly what I needed to push me over the edge, good and bad. But to really what I call draw a line in the sand and say, no matter what happens and no matter how hard it is going forward, I am not going back. And so I spent the next 2 years tweaking, testing, improving, trying everything, but not settling and going back to where I was. And really figuring out what worked and how to build a business that I could grow past that $1 million mark, but not have to work 80 hours. I wanted to work part-time. And so that's what I did. It took me 2 whole long years, but I developed a unique blueprint that I now share with my clients that allows them to make that transformation in their business in just 90 days. So I was kind of like the test guinea pig. And once I figured it out, now I've got it smoothed out. And it really takes what I like to say is the old school business fundamentals and change them to meet our needs in 2024 here today as we are. So it was quite a journey, but after I made those changes in 2012, 2 years later, I was actually able to head out for 30 days in the RV with my boyfriend, free from stress and worry about whether the business would fall apart, and take my first big adventure. And then it just got better and better and better. I went on to triple my business revenue and 4x my personal income while reduce my hours from those crazy 80 to just 16. So it is possible. If you're there, good news, there is a solution.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing and such a drastic transformation to go from 80 hours a week to 16 hours a week and to 4x your paycheck. I mean, that's insane. And I'm curious, you said you hit that breaking point where you just said, I have to draw a line here. What is the mechanics of that moment for you? What was the experience in that moment? Because I think a lot of us, we hit those moments, but sometimes it's not enough to really draw that line and to really hold that boundary going forward. And what I see in a lot of my clients and even in myself early on in my business is I hit that point multiple times, but then it didn't quite settle. It didn't quite integrate, and I didn't actually make a change as a result of it. And I see this happen for a lot of people I work with as well. So, what about that moment made such a difference for you?
That's such a great question because I think I have a similar story to yours, right? Like we got up to that line so many times, but we decide it's easier to just keep chugging along the way we were versus saying, I'm going to take on this project of figuring this out no matter what. And in that moment, it was a sick call, and it was almost like I can't rely on anyone else. Like, even though it wasn't the day-to-day business, it was a shift for a client that I was working, but it was kind of like, I cannot keep doing this. I was getting up at 4 a.m., leaving my house at 5, working a client 6 to 9, and then working in my business from like 10 to 7 o'clock for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I was just physically and emotionally drained. And so that push over the edge, I mean, it wasn't a big thing, right? It was just a sick call. Those happened every single day. But there was something about that day that I truly said to myself, I remember getting in the car and being like, that's it. There's no more options. Like I knew I was at the bottom and the only way to go was up. And the thing about it is that was so ironic and magical was once I drew that line in the sand, it was like all of a sudden, like something happened. It was like, oh, and what really was different is it was like all of a sudden I went from no time to, oh, here's a pocket of time I can work on fixing this. Here's another pocket of time. It was like I had to get to that point in order for something to change. And what I'm seeing so many clients of mine now is they're saying something's got to change because otherwise I'm going to quit my business, sell my business, or close my business. So they're definitely on that verge of really tipping over the edge. And I think we put off drawing that line in the sand because we know it's going to be work and we don't know if we have anything left in us in order to make that happen. And that's why you really need to work with a coach because they need to be there to give you those quicker, better, faster results and also cheer you on and pull you through those hard days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also sometimes we resist making those changes that we know would be better for ourselves and for the future of ourselves and our businesses as well, because we're actually afraid of being successful and afraid of being free. Because it doesn't make any sense that we would perpetuate the same painful reality if there wasn't some level of comfort in it. Because we want to keep what we're used to. The unknown, the unfamiliar is what's scary to us. And it's so hard for us to step outside of that reality to make something different because we just don't know what it could be, what it could mean. And I think we resist our own success. I'm curious if that's a theme that you see amongst your clients or that you felt in yourself, that you actually were pushing back against the possibility of a better reality and a more free reality for yourself or for your clients as well.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I've always been a person who embraced change. So I definitely wasn't afraid of change. And as a problem solver, I was so frustrated that I couldn't figure it out. But for me personally, it was more, I think I felt like I had tried everything except I hadn't invested in myself. And I'm not really sure. Now, mind you, I owned a franchise business, so I had already invested money to get started. And I just kind of felt like they should have all the answers for me. But what I didn't realize was I had bought a 40-hour owner operator business model. And once I got into business, I realized like, I don't want to be working 40 hours anymore. I was working 80, but 40 would have been nice. But I wanted something different than what they had sold me. And so thought like, okay, well, they're not giving me the answers. Where do I get it from? And luckily for me, my mom actually had a friend who was a coach. And so he sat down with me at her insistence and I just poured my heart out. And I was like, okay, here's everything, fix it. And, within an hour or two, he just gave me some simple shifts that set me on my journey, right? So for me, that's what it really was. As far as my clients, I think it's so many things nowadays, but the world we live in today, we've been so programmed by society that we need to stay busy that it's almost like you are lazy, you are, not the kind of entrepreneur you need to be. That hustle is pre-programmed into you, that if you actually had more free time, that you wouldn't be considered successful. I see so many women that are like, I have to do this and this and this. And it's really sad because I'm like, you don't, we're making more work for ourselves than what's really necessary. So I think so much has changed in the 17 years since I became an entrepreneur. And now the pressures are just a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's interesting to me, I was actually just going to ask you about that next. Like, don't most people feel that in order to have a more successful business and make more money in their business and, have a greater impact, that they have to work more, right? Is that a thought, or is that a belief that you see in a lot of people? And if so, how do you help people shift that belief to realize it's not actually true?
That's such a great statement. So as I always say, success is not guaranteed, right? Like I'm sure you and I know definitely we have worked really hard on something in our life, right? Whatever it may be, personally or professionally. And no matter how hard we worked, we weren't guaranteed success, right? And maybe we weren't successful in that, whatever it was, right? Like I wanted to be a gymnast as a kid. And no matter how hard I worked, they couldn't get over the fact that I was too tall, right? I was never going to be successful. I wasn't guaranteed success as a gymnast. And so when you think about that, if you've been programmed by, normally it starts with your parents, right? Whatever you want, you can have as long as you work for it, work harder, work longer, and then you'll be guaranteed success. And unfortunately, that's not a guarantee. But we think it is. So we just keep plugging away and we're applauded for it, right? Like we're like, yeah, good job for working so hard. And really it's what's giving us so many mindset issues in order to get over the hump that hard work does not equal success. And you can be very successful, just like I was. Once I turned things around, I went on to triple my income and 4x my personal paycheck, working 16-hour weeks. And so we really need to get to the root of why we think hard work equals success and really shift that in order to find that success on our terms.
Absolutely. Now, do you see that when that belief gets shifted out from, I have to work more, I have to work harder, I have to work more intensively, or I have to be more focused, I have to be more productive, right? Like we'll often mask that belief of like, I have to work harder under some belief of like, I have to be in flow more, or I have to achieve peak performance, or I have to figure out how to be more productive, because it's easier to say those types of things and they sound more positive, right? Mm-hmm. Than just say, I need to work more. Nobody wants to say, I need to work more, no. Even though that's the underlying belief that's fueling those surface level beliefs that cover it up. Do you find that those beliefs all need to be replaced with something else? And if so, what is it? What do we actually need to believe is true in order to be able to work less and earn more and create more impact?
I think it all really starts from how we're brought up. So when you're a child, right? Everyone says to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And you keep getting those questions. And as you get to high school, they get a little bit less. And when you get to college, it's a little bit less. And then it's like you graduate college and it's like you're grown up. What are you going to be for the rest of your life? And I don't know about you, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was the kid that was forced into college by my parents and figured it out, right? But I wasn't super successful, right out of college. I had no idea what I was doing. I was making $12 an hour. And we are so programmed of what do we want? What are we going to be when we grow up? That it's like, okay, we're asked that as children, and then we forget, what do we want as we get to be adults? And so when we start a business, maybe we go in for more time or money or freedom or flexibility, or we think we can just build a better widget than the people we worked for. But the problem is we forget the essential first step. So the first step in my signature program is what I call a business model structure. And there are three key elements to that. And the one of them is your personal vision. And if you don't know what you want for your life, then how are you ever going to know whether it's successful? And so I think because no one is asking us anymore what we want as adults, we forget that that's a priority. And if we go back and really focus on what we want, and that's how we build the foundation of your business when we work together, is all of the decisions that we're going to make about systems and team members and streamlining and all those things are based on what you want for your unique needs. And I really push my clients to dig deep, because that's when those beliefs of working harder actually change and shift to, I'm working hard to get what I want for my personal vision. And my definition of working hard might be 10 hours a week. It might be 20 hours a week, because that's how I want to work on my terms.
I love that. I love that. It's so true. And I think people overlook their own desires when they're starting their business. They're so focused on the business, and all eyes are on the business and all attention is on the business, that they forget themselves in the process.
Yep.
I'm curious for you, as you shifted back into yourself, right? You shifted away from the 80-hour work weeks and the exhaustion, the burnout, the overwhelm. What were some of the things that you had to do? Was it systems in the business? Was it delegation? Was it automating certain things? Was it bringing on more team members, or maybe letting go of team members? Like, what are some of those basic steps you knew you had to take and actually took in order to go from 80 hours a week to 16?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that's what I developed my unique blueprint on, which I call the legacy business system. And the first pillar is all what you want, right? So it's your personal vision, and then it's your business mission, vision, and values, and then your curated portfolio of products. This is the foundation of building a solid business. So for me, working those 80-hour weeks, I need to get really clear on what I wanted and what that looked and felt like. And then I had to dig into my business and what kind of business I wanted to run. Even though I had bought a franchise and there was a, system that I had bought, a business in a box, I needed to make it work for me and my dreams and goals. And I had to look at our products and services that we were offering, because what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs, we add on products or services to meet a client's needs that's growing past our, current products or services. We add on products or services to entice a client, to come buy or work for us. Or, we help a friend out just once with something. And then it's like, all of a sudden we have this laundry list. And so when we curate a beautiful portfolio that really aligns with your business mission, vision, and values and your personal vision, that's the solid foundation that then you can go and move to the second pillar of systems. And the thing about systems is, I find, and I was guilty of this, I had systems in my first business, but they weren't great. I developed them, I checked that box, but either we weren't using them, they weren't clear, they were too complicated. And so my open door policy was more like a revolving door, because all day long people were like, how do you do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And so that's where I then had to move to that third pillar of really realigning the support team that I had and get the right people in the right seats. And that really takes you figuring out what is in your zone of genius. What are you good at? What do you love to do, right? If you had to do the same thing every single day, Groundhog Day, what would be those things? And then you hire a team and put them in the right seats so it complements what not necessarily are your skill sets, right? And so that way you have a cohesive team that's focused on your business mission, vision, and values, They know exactly what you sell in your curated portfolio of products. They have systems in place that are going to help them do their jobs without being micromanaged. And then the fourth pillar is that we bring everything together and we streamline it, because especially today, right, we want to use all the technology and tools without using too many to allow us to run our business like a well-oiled machine. We want to be able to work the least amount that we possibly could. And so really what I do with my clients is we dive into their business, and it's not like it's broken and it needs to be completely rehabbed. Is we make some tweaks and shifts and little transformations here and there, and those just turn into big changes that allow them to essentially, improve their work-life balance and get rid of that burnout that they're feeling.
Yeah. It's not always the big stuff. Sometimes it's just little tweaks, little changes that compound over time. They build over time because each one of those stacks up. And, one of the things I love to think about is the idea of habit stacking, right? So like stacking certain actions next to each other or certain behaviors next to each other so that it catches on. And I think that can happen in a negative direction, where we're in the habit of, working just a little bit past 5 o'clock, or maybe a lot past 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
or we're in the habit of, not taking the time to go to the gym at the end of the workday because somebody just called us or we just got an email. And those actions, even though they seem really small, they build over time. And they can build in a positive direction as well. Like if we make it a habit to cut our work off and set that boundary at 5 o'clock, and then we go to our Pilates class or we go do the treadmill, and then we come home and spend time with the family, that is going to have a compound effect over time as well. And I think oftentimes we only get to that place of burnout, of overwhelm, of exhaustion, of feeling like we need to close a business or sell the business or just quit, because we are in those habits, those negative habits that have built up over time. So are there any specific habits or specific behaviors that you see all of your clients taking that they probably don't even notice that they're doing, right? They don't even notice that they are working a few minutes past when they wanted to cut off their workday, or they don't even notice that they're never taking time for self-care. Are there things that you see as common threads that probably everybody listening to this could benefit from auditing themselves on?
Yeah. So I think the biggest habit that I see that I know I was guilty of, and this is another thing that society has programmed that we have to do, is when we're building a business, we need to say yes to everyone, right? And because we do it out of a scarcity mindset, like, what if I don't say yes and there's an opportunity? Or we do it out of fear or FOMO. And what that leads to is what I see as an outside perspective of working with a coach with many of my clients, is it just leads to all of those things that you just said, right? So you say yes to everything, whether it aligns or whether it doesn't, because you just never know. And that's how we're building all of these businesses that are just running us ragged, right? And that's why the foundation of having your personal vision, right, it really helps you make decisions. Let me give you an example. So one of the things that I set in my business is I don't do meetings before 10 a.m. And so this is like a hard for me. I don't do it. I'm just not a morning person. And so someone will say, hey, Sailynn, do you want to go to this breakfast meeting? And it sounds amazing, but I know 7:30 in the morning is never going to work for me. And so what I do is I reply to them with, thank you so much for that invite. It sounds like an amazing program, but, I don't start before 10 a.m. because that is what works best for me in my business and my goals. So what happens with this is when you start defining and start responding to things with the opportunities and people that you want to attract, is it comes back to you. I can't tell you how many people now reach out to me and say, I know you don't start before 10 a.m. I'm having a similar event and it's at lunch. I would love to have you there. And I'm like, yes. So what they heard was, it's not that I didn't want to go to their event. Their event was probably amazing. It's just the timing didn't work for me. So the next time that they have something similar and it's at lunch, then they're going to ask me. And then there comes that opportunity that works for me and my personal vision and business. And so that's what's, I think, really a habit that we need to get out of, is saying yes to everything out of fear, FOMO, scarcity mindset, because it's really running you ragged in the end.
Absolutely. It's so true. And I think it's really hard for people to draw those boundaries and set those boundaries clearly and stick to them. I know for myself, I don't take meetings before a certain time of day, and I often will make an exception because there's people over in Europe that need to meet with me, or there's people on the other side of the planet that want to meet with me. So sometimes if it's like Australia, I'm going to meet past when I said I would stop meetings, or if it's Europe, I'll meet a lot earlier than I was planning to. It's easy to let our boundaries go when there is an opportunity. And yet it's so important to stick to those in the face of opportunities, to know that no opportunity is worth sacrificing our peace and our sanity, right, in the process of building a business. So that's really powerful lesson.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we just need to remember is, even if you feel like you're passing up on an opportunity, like you said, it's someone from another country in a different time zone or whatever, when you say no, it's because it doesn't work for your business. And that's okay. When you build a business model structure, you're going to be able to attract your tribe and the people that match perfectly when you really stick to those boundaries. And don't get me wrong, I was at a networking meeting the other day that started at 9:30, but it's an event that I truly enjoy and love and find value in. And so I don't mind bending it there, but it's really not things that I don't bend to, things that I absolutely don't want to do. I just say, no, you need to find a time between 10 and 4. So you really have to assess what you want and what does your business look like for you on your terms.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because that's what serves you in the long run and makes it sustainable. Because what's the point of building something amazing if you can't uphold it? And I know once you made those changes and you were able to reduce your work week and multiply your income, you found a lot more freedom and you eventually sold the business. So upholding those boundaries and setting those boundaries for yourself, it's so powerful in actually seeing the success that you desire. So I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to that process of scaling the business to a point where you actually sold it, and what that aftermath was like for you. What did you do once you sold the business? What was done with the freedom that you found?
Yeah, definitely. So, I was in a unique opportunity that I was a franchise and it was a 10-year agreement, and a lot of things had changed. My family had moved to sunny South Florida, and I was back in Massachusetts, and I had been commuting for 5 years, between Florida and Massachusetts, and I just decided it was the time to change. And because I had built such a phenomenal business, I was able to get top dollar and a pretty easy amount of potential buyers. And that's the thing. And that's why I call my unique blueprint the legacy business system, because you really are building a legacy. It's your opportunity to do with it as you choose when it's in a really good spot, right? And so for me, I chose to sell. I moved here to sunny South Florida. And I wish what I would have done is taken a year to just chill out and really just enjoy. Instead, I jumped into an online clothing boutique because I was like, what am I going to do with all my time? Even though I wasn't even working that much. And I had a direct sales skincare business for a while. And what I really realized is, one of the things that I loved in my franchise business was I loved trying to give my staff as much time and money, flexibility, and freedom that I could, but I could only do so much as an employer, right? And so when I got into direct sales, I realized that I was helping most of my team members with coaching, building businesses that aligned with their personal vision of what they wanted. And so, really, my passion for business and coaching kind of came together in January 21. And that's when I said, I'm going to do what I love, which is helping women. And I'm also going to do it my way. And, I think that's so important. When I started business coaching, so many people said, you have to wear a suit and you can't, you got to do it this way and you got to go to all these networking meetings and you got to do all these things. And I was like, no, I did that in my first business. In this business, I'm doing things my way. And that's where I call myself the your fun business coach. That's where that came from. And I can tell you that I think I am way more memorable as your fun business coach, wearing fun Lily Pulitzer prints and colors, and really doing things my way. And I love it because I was able to embrace that. And so as you're looking to really rebuild or make some changes in your business, I want you to really dig deep and think, if I could do this all over again, what would I do differently? And how can you potentially, make some changes in your business to get as close to possible to what you really want? Because that's going to bring you back the joy and happiness and fulfillment in your business. Because I can tell you firsthand, having all the money in the world, you can't buy happiness. And so you really want to build a business that you love waking up and doing the work every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Ugh. And what I love about what you just said is that it's very actionable advice. Like, look at if you were to start over again. And that's a very powerful question to ask yourself, because sometimes we get so caught up in what we're already doing right now, what we're already engaged in, and feeling kind of stuck in that. Like, we have to keep going on the path that we're on. And by asking yourself, okay, if I were to just start from zero, how would I do this differently? That can open so many doors and help us see things that we didn't even know were possible as opportunities for right now. We don't have to start over to implement them. It just gives us a fresh perspective on what we could implement in the moment.
Exactly.
So cool. That's so cool. So, if there's one thing that you could be remembered for, right, for all of our guests on the podcast here today, but also for your life, right? You're all about building legacy. What would it be? What do you want to be remembered for?
I really truly want, my mission is to help women improve their work-life balance, because here's what I know for a fact. I worked in senior home care for 13 years. And at the end of your life, none of my clients ever said, I wish I had worked more. They say things like, I wish I had a better relationship with my spouse. I wish I had taken that trip. I wish I had lived a life I loved. I wish I had taken more adventures with my children. I wish I had been there more. And these were all clients that had all the money to pay me privately for my services. But so many of them had phenomenal success in life professionally, but not personally. And so if there's one message that I really want to get across to people, is that you can build a business and have a life at the same time. It is possible to have it all and have it all at once. We just have to use a blueprint, put a plan, a system in place in order for you to make that happen. So
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. And it's so true. Nobody's going to be on their deathbed saying, oh, I wish I'd spent more time in the office,
no.
Right? It's amazing. Well, thank you so much. There's so much gold in this episode, and you shared so much wisdom and so many actionable takeaways. So I know everyone listening to this is just going to love that and eat that up. So thank you so much. Where can people find you and connect with you and benefit from your work?
Yeah, so you can kind of find me everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of them. It is at Sailynn. Doyle is where you can find me everywhere. And my website is www.passionpurposeposture.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we will drop all of those links in the show notes so you can go ahead and find Sailynn everywhere. Thank you so much for taking the time today. This was really fun. I benefited as well. I gained so much wisdom from you. So thank you. I really appreciate this and had so much fun.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I so appreciate it. And I hope your audience found it valuable. And if they are looking to learn more about the unique blueprint and whether they think it would work for their business, I have a free workshop that they can check out. It's called the No BS Work-Life Balance Workshop. And it's the 3 vital shifts you need to make in order to banish burnout, boost your profits, and reignite your entrepreneurial fire. And they can find that at www.passionpurposeposture.com/workshop. So that'll give you some behind the scenes look into how you can implement it into your own business.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, we'll drop that link as well because that sounds very useful, very helpful. So thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. And thanks for taking the time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.